gentlemen, to Longbox Chronicles Month here on Reaction and Review. Yes, guys, it is that time of year once more when I dedicate an entire month to comic book movies, and I've decided to kick off this month with an animated anthology film from 2008. That movie is Batman Gotham Knight. Now, I'm going to tell you guys that there is very, very little about this film, I honestly know. Besides the fact that it is another direct-to-video animated film put out by DC Comics, and as was proven earlier this year when I spent an entire month covering those, mostly those things are awesome, and at worst, they're still really frickin' good. So I do have high hopes going in on that. I do know that every story here was actually animated by Japanese studios. I believe it was Madhouse and a couple others. Like Madhouse, I know had a hand in this, which is awesome because I'm really a fan of a whole lot of the stuff that studio works on. I also know that the stories here are supposed to be set in the same universe as the Nolan Batman trilogy. Specifically, the stories are set between Batman Begins and The Dark Knight. However, I also know that what happens here is not canon with that universe. It's just in the same setting. I guess it's kind of sort of like a, God, this is going to sound so fucking nerdy. It's essentially a fucking Elseworlds version of the Nolan verse. That's... Wow, I feel incredibly nerdy, and that's something that, or I should say, I feel nerdier than normal. I don't know if all of that is going to add up to something great. I certainly hope so. And the only way I'm going to find out if this thing has any positive to it at all is if I shut up and I push play, and I'm going to do that right now. So, without further ado, it's time to kick back, relax, and check out Batman Gotham Knight. You know, guys, I am really digging this first story. It is incredibly creative. And I'm just really, really loving how each kid's story all kind of merges into one grand story. And mind you guys, this right here is just the first of our 6 stories. I am absolutely loving this thing so far. You know, guys, I've seen a lot of Batman movies and TV shows, read a lot of Batman comics. I think this is one of the few times Batman has ever been genuinely fucking terrifying. Just him standing stock fucking still while totally surrounded by flame. This is the most intimidating I think I've ever seen Batman. This is fucking awesome.
A lizard man, 8 feet tall, covered in scales. He attacked O'Fallon, carried him down.
So the villain for this story is going to be Killer Croc. Okay. I am totally willing to see exactly what, I'm totally willing to see what a Japanese animation studio can do with fucking Croc. That, guys, this thing should prove to be awesome. You know, guys, I really think that out of all of the stories so far, this one here is possibly the weakest. And I think it's because the whole thought of how Bruce Wayne, Batman, learned to deal with pain is not exactly a story that most people are going to care about. It really isn't helped by the fact that it's kind of a very dry and poorly written story. I mean, well, not poorly written in terms of, you know, story flow, just the fact that it's kind of dull. I'm kind of waiting on this story to end so we can get back into, you know, something maybe a little bit more interesting. Well, guys, that was Batman Gotham Knight. Let me shut that off. Okay. Before I get into anything else, I have to mention, because earlier in the video I said that one of the stories, which I actually have the list of all the story titles here, hang on a minute, it's a story called Working Through Pain. I mentioned that one was the weakest out of all of them I had seen up to that point. And it is most certainly a weaker story. It is very, very dry and slow-paced. But I'm going to tell you guys right now, man, that ending, holy fuck, the ending of that story absolutely won it back, and it just swung around, and it just became amazing. So it was a story with an incredibly slow build, leading to an absolutely amazing finish on that story. And that one is the second to last story in this. The last one focuses on a rather sadly underused DC villain, Deadshot, who I have always had a bit of a soft spot for. I've always thought that Deadshot's a cool villain, and what they do with him here is just awesome. I really did like that. In fact, guys, what the hell? I'm going to start with writing. The writing on this is incredibly strong all around. One thing I was not expecting was the fact that all these stories are linked. And when I say that, I'm not talking about the usual thing when it comes to anthology films where everything is told by way of a framing narrative of some kind, or rather a framing story that sort of gives us, like a way to lead into each story. What I mean is that everything that happens in the first story has sort of a direct hand on what happens in the next story, and the next, and the next. It really is one big story done by 6 different teams, and it's done in a really interesting fashion. I really liked what was done here in terms of writing, and our stories here are really tight. They're really fast paced. Minus working through pain, where basically the pace just takes a fucking nosedive. However, though, it all sort of pays off at the very end with just this perfect finish on that story. Just everything continues. And when I say that each story links, what I mean is that the criminal in the first story, for instance, is the criminal that's being shipped off to Arkham at the start of the second story, and that little drop off is literally like the kickoff point for that story. And the ending of working through pain directly leads into the Deadshot story. That there's just showing you how the first two and the last two connect, and there is something which actually does link every single story, and it's a really cool thing. It was a very creative way of going about all this. Writing here is really solid. Our characters here are written very well. It really does feel like six different stories lifted directly out of the Batman comics, but that kind of makes sense because a whole lot of the writers, actually, I'm looking at the writers here on the back, a lot of these guys have a history of writing Batman either in film, comics, or TV, so they all know how to write Batman. So it honestly is not a shocker that what we wound up with was really solid stuff. Writing here is fantastic, and even honestly, guys, as I've stated, that one story I thought was going to be a little bit of a drop off still wound up being really good, and I'm so happy about that. I'm going to cover voice. I'm going to cover acting a little bit later. I do want to cover animation because, as I stated earlier, this thing here was an anthology film that was animated by a handful of Japanese studios, specifically Madhouse, Force C, and Production IG. And all of them do a fantastic job. One thing, though, that may happen to throw people off a little bit, I do have to warn, is that every story also has a completely unique art style. So you basically are going to see six different stories done by 3 different studios, and those 6 stories will each have a totally different art style, and because of that, Batman is drawn vastly different in every single story. So we have our first story, which is basically a bunch of kids talking about how they saw Batman, and what do you know? Every single one of their stories also happened to link and sort of tell this really fluid story. Except one of them saw him as this like living shadow. Another one saw him as like a variant on fucking Man Bat. Another one saw him as like saw him essentially as Iron Man with pointy ears. And all of that is really cool. And then when Batman shows up, it's, just a more classic style Batman, just usual tights Batman. And then as each story goes, Batman has different cowls and different types of armor. In one story, it actually is justified because he has a new modified suit of armor which is able to deflect bullets. The story at the end actually explains why he doesn't use that in any other anything, and it really does make a lot of sense. Some people are going to be thrown off by the fact that Batman looks drastically different in every single story. Other people, like me, are going to be able to just look at it and go, that looks really cool, and they really aren't going to care about the fact that Batman's outfit is completely changed. Or, well, it actually isn't just Batman's outfit; it also is other characters. So Alfred, who shows up in the last two stories, looks completely different in each story, and that may happen to throw off a couple of people. I honestly, had no real problem with it. I noticed it, but I didn't really much care. So that there's just a comment on art. Animation, well, I mentioned the three studios which worked on this. All three of them are known for turning in spectacular animation, and none of them falter here. This is some of the best animation I have ever seen Batman done in, period. This stuff is spot on, beautiful, fluid. I absolutely loved the way that each studio was able to just make Gotham theirs, yet still make it look like Gotham, if that makes any sense to people. It is a very, very fascinating way of just seeing exactly what happens when you take a Western character like Batman and you give him to the East and just ask them to animate him, and you get some really awesome looking stuff. Animation here is amazing. Now I'm gonna jump back over to where I normally am after I'm done with writing. Let's talk about the acting. Well, Batman in all six stories is voiced by Kevin Conroy. That honestly should tell you all that has to be said there. It's Kevin fucking Conroy as Batman. It's guaranteed to be great. And the rest of the cast also turns in a fantastic showing. I really do like how the characters who show up in multiple stories are played by the same characters. So when you see Alfred, it's voiced by the same guy. When you see Lieutenant Gordon, or when you see Crispus Allen, they are voiced by the same actor in each story, which kind of helps, I guess, keep everything steady in terms of at least some level of continuity, and that is great. And our cast here turns in a fantastic job. I loved everything that our cast did here. I seriously am trying to think if there was anybody who turned in a bad showing. The closest I can come to a bad showing, and it wasn't even a bad showing, is Rob Paulson plays one of the gangsters in like two of the stories. And I really think that it's his dialogue more than his acting, but everything that he gives sounds incredibly forced. It wasn't bad. It just didn't sound like, it just didn't sound natural, which is odd because Rob Paulson can make damn near anything sound natural. But when he has to play, I think it was Sal fucking Maroney, I think was the character he played as. My God, like every single line of dialogue he gives, it does not sound natural. I never thought, guys, I'd have to say something negative about the voice work of Rob fucking Paulson. But there it is. it came off just not quite sounding right, and it stands out when every other member of the cast is turning in such a great showing. Mind you, once more, he honestly isn't doing a bad job. It just doesn't sound right, and it seriously, guys, could even just be something like his lines just weren't mixed right, and that's why they don't quite sound as natural as everybody else's. I don't know what happened there. There's just something about his lines that just didn't sound right. Beyond that, though, guys, the acting here is awesome. Our sound mix, again, provided that the issue with Paulson's lines is more him and not the sound mix. Sound mix is great with everything else. Our score here is great. Our lighting here, and when I say lighting for animation, I'm talking about the way that everything is shaded, is great. I really loved how a couple of the stories had this very dark stylistic shading to it. It looked really cool. Camera work, again, that actually is just more exactly how everything was drawn up for animation was really good. CG, this thing has a ton of CG, specifically things like such as the Gotham like city fucking scape. Like anytime that it's like a wide shot of most of Gotham City, it's probably done in CG. There's maybe one hand-drawn, or rather hand-painted shot of Gotham. Everything else is all CG, and it looks great. Our trains, I believe, were also done in CG. Our traffic was done in CG, and it all looks really solid. Honestly, guys, the only thing I can comment that I would say is a negative when it comes to this film would be the second to last story, and once more, the ending of that story wins it, fucking totally wins it back and makes it amazing. Now, can I recommend Batman Gotham Knight? Well, yes. I can totally recommend it. Oh, there is one other minor problem, I guess I can count this as a problem, and it's like the one niggling gripe I have with almost every one of these DC films. This thing is criminally short. I believe that the end credits began running around an hour and 10 minutes in, and you could have totally fleshed out a whole lot of these stories. You could have done a whole lot more. This movie would have totally benefited from maybe being, I'd say, about 10 minutes longer, maybe, and we could have fleshed out these stories a little bit more and made all of them even better. But that, honestly, guys, is such a minor nothing, but it is something I kind of felt like mentioning, because that is an issue with a lot of these DC films, is they are like stupidly short, and it just sort of bugs me a bit. Now, beyond that, I can totally recommend this. Totally. If you guys can find a copy of this thing somewhere, by all means pick it up. I do know that at least on DVD, and I think it might also have been put out on Blu-ray. You can get this thing as a combo, as basically like a two movies in one combo, with Justice League: The New Frontier, which is also another amazing movie, and I can totally recommend that one. And if you can find that, by all means, go for it, because you're then getting two awesome movies, probably for the price of one. And if you can only find this thing alone, still, by all means, snag it. This sucker is awesome. Now, Batman Gotham Knight came off the Amazon wish list. The person who sent it in is Robert. Robert has sent in quite a few movies for this series, and I do thank him for that. And Robert, I also thank you for sending in this one. I was really curious about this, because I didn't know exactly how well a Batman anthology film would work out. And it worked out great. It worked out awesome. This sucker is going to have a happy spot in my Blu-ray collection, and I wouldn't have known if you hadn't sent it in. So guys, please, by all means, swing on over to Robert's profile on Amazon. He has up there reviews, written fucking reviews for a ton of different products. By all means, swing over there and check out everything that he has to say over there. Once more, Robert, I thank you. You fucking rule. Now, because this thing was so short, I kind of feel like watching a little bit more Batman. Luckily, I have every other DC animated movie at my fucking disposal. I'm going to hang on to a few of them for future reaction and reviews, but that still leaves me with a ton I can still watch. In fact, I'm actually looking at my shelf, and you know what? I kind of feel like rewatching Batman under the Red Hood right now. That sounds like a really good idea. So I am going to go and do that. And with that, guys, we come to the close of another reaction and review. Until next time, ladies and gentlemen, take care, and I will see you all in the near future. Peace.